Welcome to the Code 3D online training modules. This tutorial will show you how to use the timeline. The timeline controls how your events unfold over time. The timeline consists of main scene events, which are displayed on the first row of the timeline, and objects, which are displayed on their own individual rows. These object rows are created automatically as objects are placed in the scene and become visible whenever an object is selected. To make events change over time, you will create markers and then designate a property change at that point in time. As you place an object into the scene, its timeline will appear in red, indicating that the object timeline is active and selected. The previously active timeline row will become inactive and, by default, disappear. You may choose to keep a timeline row in view even when inactive so that you can align the markers of one object with another's. To do this, click on the eyeball icon of that row. The eye will open to indicate that the timeline row will stay in view regardless of your object selection. Click this button again to hide the row as normal. From the timeline, you can lock an object so that its properties cannot be changed. The Lock/Unlock button on a timeline row represents whether or not that object is locked. Press this button to lock or unlock the object. The default state for all objects is unlocked. Your scrubber, which is the blue bar, represents which time in the scene you are currently viewing. To move the scrubber, click and hold the mouse on the triangle portion at the top of the scrubber bar and drag it left or right. You can also click on a timeline marker to select it, and the scrubber will jump to that marker. In order to preview the scenario at any time, click on the play button to watch the scene unfold in the editor mode. Click on the pause button to stop playback in the editor mode at any time. To move the scrubber to time 0, click on the icon with the double arrows pointing to the left. To move the scrubber to the last marker in your scene, click on the icon with the double arrows pointing to the right. To move the scrubber to the next marker on the timeline, click on the icon with a single arrow pointing to the right. To move the icon to the next marker on the timeline, click on the icon with a single arrow pointing to the left. Click on the magnifying glass with the plus sign to zoom in on the timeline, making the displayed range shorter and spreading out the display of your markers. Click on the magnifying glass with the minus sign to zoom out on the timeline, making the displayed range longer and bringing your markers closer together. Click on the trash can icon in the timeline to delete the selected marker. Scene event markers allow you to control a variety of actions. They will allow you to set a hotkey to jump to a specific time in real-time playback, capture a specific camera angle, upload a 2D image, upload an audio file, or have a text box appear in real-time playback. To create a new scene event marker, move your scrubber to the time at which you want your event and then click on Create New Marker button, the yellow diamond icon. To move an existing marker, click on the marker to activate it. It will turn purple when it is activated. Then drag it to the desired time and release. Hotkeys will allow you to use your keyboard to jump to various scene markers during real-time playback. This can be used in a variety of ways, including creating branching points in your scenario, returning to a key point in time, or returning to a specific saved view throughout the scenario. In the Scene Marker Properties panel, you can assign a hotkey by choosing from the drop-down list. During real-time playback, you can now navigate to that marker in the scene at any time by pushing the keyboard hotkey you selected. For details, see the Learning How to Use Real-Time Playback section. Setting specific camera angles allows you to change the view of the tactical camera in real-time playback mode. Select or create a scene marker to identify where you would like the camera angle to appear. Then navigate to the camera angle you desire in the editor. Check the box marked Camera Angle and then click on the Capture Current View button. The program will save those coordinates for use in real-time playback. See the Learning How to Use Real-Time Playback section for details. To preview what a camera angle at the given coordinates will look like during playback, click on the Preview Camera button. The camera will jump to the specified coordinates. You can upload a 2D image to appear in your scene at a designated scene marker. Check the Image File box and then choose your file. In real-time playback, this image will pause playback automatically when it comes up. You will be able to press spacebar to continue with the scenario at any time. You can also upload an audio file to create sound effects in your scene at a designated scene marker. Check the audio file box and then choose your file either from the Code 3D sound library or from another sound file you have saved on your computer. To preview the sound, click the Preview Audio button. You can set this file to loop for a given amount of time. Type the number of seconds into the loop audio box and press the Enter key to submit the change. In real-time playback, the file will loop for that much time before stopping. If you only want the audio file to play once, then leave the loop audio at 0.0, and it will by default play once at this scene marker. You can create a text box to appear in your scene at a designated scene marker. Check the text box checkbox. Click in the text box, and the box will turn green, allowing you to type your message or question. Be sure to remember that to submit this text, you must press the Enter key. In real-time playback, this text box will pause playback automatically when it comes up. You can continue by pressing the spacebar. Object markers allow you to change objects over time. For instance, you can make a small fire grow larger, have an emergency vehicle arrive on scene, have a firefighter walk to a victim, and many other types of actions and animations. You must create a marker for an object anytime where you want that object's properties to change. When you place an object in the scene for the first time, a marker will automatically appear for that object at the time where the scrubber is located. To create a new object marker, move your scrubber to the time at which you want your event, and then click on the Create New Marker button. This is the blue circle button on the left side of the timeline. To move an existing marker, click on the marker to activate it. Activated markers will turn green. Then drag it to the desired time and release. To make an object property change over time, for example, a small fire starts and then grows over 30 seconds into a larger fire. First, place the object into the scene at the desired time. An object marker will appear at that time. Move the scrubber to the time when you want the change to complete, in this case 30 seconds later. Click on the blue Create New Marker button and a new active marker will appear. In the Properties panel, make the change you desire. In this case, we will use the Size slider bar to make the fire larger. This change will now take place over the time you specified. You can preview your change by moving the scrubber back to the first marker and pressing the Play button. To change the amount of time it takes, simply select and then drag one of the markers to a different time. To speed up the change, move the markers closer together. To slow down the change, move them further apart. In this way, you can change any property of any object over time. Remember that if you create a new object at any point on the timeline beyond time point 0, this object will be invisible by default at any time prior to the time point where you have created it. For this reason, we would highly recommend building out all of your scenery and static objects first at time point 0, and then only add new objects as you want them to appear along the timeline.